start with you. Chair Decker.
Present.
Vice Chair Konzioka.
Present.
Member Fong.
Here.
Member Gardner.
Present.
Member Prescott.
Present.
Thank you. We have the full complement of the WEIM governing body and a quorum, so we may proceed.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for calling in today and being here at our meeting. There are a lot of balls in the air with new market participants coming into the Western Energy Imbalance market. So a special welcome to Tacoma and Avista if representatives are on the call. In addition, there's a lot of work still going on with the resource sufficiency and the extended day-ahead market. We're looking forward to the go-live of the Bonneville Power Administration and Tucson Electric Power, who are coming in on the next couple months. So I hope you'll also be joining us as well for tomorrow's joint session of the Cal ISO Board of Governors and the Western Energy Imbalance Market Body, governing body. Some updates that would otherwise be in our general session are now moved to the joint session as they are joint authority decisions or joint authority interest items. So as we get started today, I want to ask if there are any public comments not related to items that are on our agenda today. So any public comments not related to our agenda?
And please feel free to place yourself into the comment queue by utilizing the raise hand feature located at the bottom of your screen. If you are on a mobile device, tap your screen to display the toolbar, then press raise hand. You will be unmuted when it is your turn. Please accept the unmute message to become unmuted. If you are on the phone, please press #2 to enter the queue. Please then state your name and affiliation once unmuted. Okay, it looks as though we have no public comments at this time.
Okay, so I am going to turn it back over to Roger Collinson, our Corporate Secretary, for the approval of our last meeting minutes.
Thank you, Chair Decker. May I have a motion to approve the February 8th, 2022 Western EIM Governing Body General Session minutes?
This is also moved.
Thank you, Valerie. Second?
Second, John.
Thank you, John. And your vote, Chair Decker?
Aye.
Vice Chair Konzioka?
Aye.
Member Fong?
Aye.
Member Gardner?
Aye.
And Member Prescott?
Aye.
Thank you, governing body. The motion is approved.
All right. Next on the agenda is the report from our CEO, Elliot Mainzer. So, Elliot.
Thank you, Chair Decker. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be with you this session. Of course, tomorrow at the joint general session, I will offer a more detailed readout on my CEO report submitted on March 9th. But today I wanted just to draw a line through a few of the topics in that report. I'm going to start out just by, I feel as though the last several months, I think we've really turned the corner on the very, very important topic of resource adequacy. I think all of you know last summer was another very stressed summer on the grid, and we were able to work through some very difficult operating conditions with a lot of coordination with utilities inside California and across the West, and the addition of a significant amount of additional capacity out of the system last year, a trend which is now continuing. Last year, California actually added more capacity to its grid than any time in its history, over 5,400 megawatts. We are also now pleased to have 2,600 megawatts of lithium-ion batteries on our grid and expecting another 1,745 megawatts just before this summer. So the state agencies in cooperation with the ISO and stakeholders across California are really, really extremely focused now on bringing additional clean capacity onto the system to continue to be able to ride through our net peak events and in generally to restore a healthy reserve margin to the state and to maintain reliability and affordability, which is just such a central underpinning of everything we're doing with respect to market development and market expansion. I hope many of you had a chance to get a look at the energy storage video that we produced. We really wanted to call attention to the history of that resource here in California, and to continue to collaborate and share those learnings with our partners around the West and around the world. You can find that a link to that video if you haven't seen it on our Energy Matters blog, which is on our website. And so the trend towards resource adequacy development is really important. Of course, another key component of that, as I discussed in the CEO report, is transmission. Just an essential responsibility for the ISO to make sure, in partnership with the asset owners here in the state, across the West, that we've got enough transmission capacity to provide deliverability to load of this next big generation of resources that are coming on the system. So our 20-year outlook that we released just a few weeks ago, I think, is a really, really important input into the conversation to take that long-term view of the architecture of the California grid, to understand both the in-state, offshore, and out-of-state resources that can potentially provide service to California. Of course, it's complemented this week with a proposal for some additional transmission capacity in the short term, 24 projects, which we're going to be taking to the Board of Governors for approval later this week. So getting additional capacity on the system, supporting that with sufficient transmission, these are such essential pieces of the ISO's strategy and so foundational to reliability and resource adequacy on our service territory. So we're really appreciative of all the collaboration with the state agencies, stakeholders, utilities, and partners across the West in making that happen. As Chair Decker noted, we're also extremely pleased to welcome Avista Utilities and Tacoma Power to the family of EIM entities back on March 2nd. The implementations, I think, went very well. Their teams both did an extraordinary job of preparation, and I remember getting an email from Khaled Abdul Rahman at about 3 o'clock in the morning announcing successful onboarding of both of those entities. So thanks to their teams for those partnerships. And, of course, as we get into the early part of May, we're very honored to welcome the Bonneville Power Administration and Tucson Electric as well to the EIM family. So these are really, really important additions, continuing to grow the geographical scope and the resource diversity of the energy imbalance market as we start approaching the $2 billion mark on gross benefits since inception. Of course, at the same time as we continue to expand the EIM, the EDAM market development is, I think, going very, very well. Tremendous thanks to all the folks that have been participating in our stakeholder process. Later this week on Friday, we'll kind of come up for air after the first 3 months of the year to take stock of the progress that we've made with stakeholders in the development of the straw proposal, which will be released in the latter part of April. And, of course, we'll hear a little bit later today also from the Governance Review Committee, which just received a big round of input, of comments from stakeholders, and is going to be processing that and thinking about the next increment of governance reforms as well. So a lot of progress, a lot of things to discuss. It's going to be a big week of dialogue about all these different initiatives, and it's just a real pleasure to be working with all of you on these incredibly important outcomes, and looking forward to a positive and very, I think, momentous spring and summer here of 2022. So that concludes my report for today, and it's just a pleasure to be here. And if you have any questions, if not, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Decker. Thank you.
Okay, before we move on, is there any questions from any of the governing body members? Rob, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, good afternoon, Elliot. I hope this is not an unfair question. It's impressive on how much battery storage has been added, and that was, very clear, and you've got a great future. And you also noted that hydro resources are down. What are you seeing, if you are able to comment on resources outside of California? What does that picture look like?
Yeah, well, of course, one of the key macro trends in the West is, there continues to be a lot of resource retirements across the region, and so working on multiple forums, both in terms of bilateral conversations, continuing to stay in touch with the folks at the now Western Power Pool as they develop their Western Resource Adequacy Program, really trying to understand how sort of the commons of the West is changing. And we know there is, continued resource requirements. We obviously keep a very close eye on the hydro conditions in the Pacific Northwest, as those resources are an important source of imports to California. But you are correct. Generally, this year we had a banner December, I think a record-setting December, 160% of average. And then right on the back of that, we had the two driest months on record in California. It shows you sort of this new normal of resource volatility. So we will continue to track the general aggregate resource balance in the West. We can stay tied out with WEC on that widest possible view. And as California develops its resource acquisition strategy, a fine-tuning of import assumptions will obviously be a key factor in the total amount of procurement that comes into play at the PUC and with other regulatory authorities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Elliot before we move on? Okay. So next on the agenda, we have Chair of the Body of State Regulators and Utah Commissioner Chair, Thad LeVar, to provide a report from the Body of State Regulators. So Chair LeVar.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Decker, Vice Chair Konziolka, and members of the Western Energy Imbalance Market governing body. I'm honored to present this report from the Body of State Regulators. Like many WEIM stakeholders, members of the BOSR are interested in the developments toward a potential day-ahead market structure and operation. Our most recent BOSR meeting focused on a presentation from CAISO staff about the progress to date. Some individual BOSR members have been participating heavily in the related working groups, and each of us are looking forward to the straw proposal that will be released in April. Whether we are able to achieve consensus positions on that straw proposal is likely to be a primary focus for the BOSR over the next few weeks and months. While there are diverse viewpoints among BOSR members about many of the details surrounding a potential day-ahead energy market, in my view, there's also a shared optimism within the BOSR. We each recognize the challenges in establishing this kind of market structure that involves increased operational control by the CAISO and also increased commitments by participants. Those challenges relate both to economic issues and to policy issues. But the potential benefits are a source of broad optimism. No one wants the initiative to fail, especially not anyone on the BOSR. And we can all agree that durable structures are necessary for long-term success. As we move towards public vetting of a day-ahead market straw proposal, I look forward to more formal participation from the BOSR as an entity, while we all look for as much consensus and durability as is possible for this complex initiative. The other two areas where the BOSR is currently focusing attention are the Governance Review Committee and the Nominating Committee. Commissioner Letha Tawney from Oregon is representing the BOSR on the GRC, and Commissioner Haley Williamson from Nevada is representing the BOSR on the Nominating Committee. Each of them are deeply engaged in these efforts and are regularly informing BOSR members and seeking feedback as these initiatives continue. I want to be sure and express my appreciation to both Commissioner Tawney and Commissioner Williamson for the significant work they're doing to keep the BOSR engaged in these two efforts. Governance review is one of the primary reasons the BOSR was originally created. I think it's safe to describe WEIM governance as a success story to date that has resulted in significant benefits. But it's also a story that is not yet complete. CAISO and the WEIM are responsible for a tremendous amount of momentum and progress toward more regional electricity coordination in the Western Interconnection. Continued focus on refinement of governance can only increase that momentum and ensure durable evolution of Western coordination. The BOSR is committed to playing a responsible role in this progress. And finally, BOSR participation in the Nominating Committee process occurs because of our interest in good program governance, but also affords each of us an appreciation for the commitment that so many individuals and entities across the West have in the success of the WEIM. Those of you who serve on the governing body and those who express a willingness to do so provide evidence of that commitment from a broad spectrum of stakeholders and interests. That widespread engagement represents the right path forward for durable program evolution. Our next BOSR update meeting is Friday, April 8th, and it will be an open meeting with materials posted to the BOSR website. The following month, we will have one of our twice-a-year in-person meetings, and this will be in San Diego on Monday, May 2nd, in coordination with the CREPC and the WIRAD meetings. And that concludes my report. I appreciate your time this afternoon, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions from the governing body members for Chair LeVar?
Anita, I do have just one clarifying question for Chair LeVar.
Go ahead.
Great. This will be an easy one, don't worry. I don't know if you said it, but I was hoping that we could get a clarification on the timing for the BOSR's meeting in advance of the CREPC meeting, as I'm sure a lot of folks are starting to make their travel plans.
Well, sure. I believe it's 9 a.m. Monday morning, Monday, May 2nd.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And Chair LeVar, I do plan to be at that meeting. I'm looking forward to it. And Great report. I'm really pleased to see that the BOSSER is looking towards optimistically the work of the EDAM. So I do hear a lot of yes, it needs to be durable, and yes, there needs to be a lot of consensus, and I'm sure there'll be some compromises along the way, but really have appreciated how important the BOSSER's engagement with the WEIM has been, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is we have Vijay Satal from the Western Resources Advocate, and he is the chair of the Regional Issues Forum. And so Vijay, can you tell us what the Regional Issues Forum is up to? Ooh, did we lose?
I believe I see Vijay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair Decker and EIM governing body members and everybody else on this call. We have a couple of updates from the Regional Issues Forum. First of all, I appreciate and thank Pam Schwerberg for suggesting me to take over this role for this year, and the collective support of the entire RIF team in helping me take on this chair role for a year with Josh Walter as a co-chair. We have a few updates. First of all, I want to welcome and congratulate two new members to the EIM RIF. One is Lindsay Shackleway with Nevada Energy. She comes to us to represent the EIM entity sector liaison role. And we have Jamie Stomatson, who will take over the consumer advocate sector role in the public interest consumer advocate joint seat representation. Lindsay comes from Nevada Energy, as I said earlier, and has been kind of fairly involved with Nevada Energy issues involving EIM and has had prior roles with transmission, merchant, and generation aspects. Lindsay is on the call if anybody has any questions or wishes to know more. And we have Jamie Stomatson coming from the Montana Consumer Council and has been very interested in regionalization and market issues. So I want to give that update on these two new seats that have been filled. The second update I wanted to give was the Regional Issues Forum really thanks the EIM governing body members, especially Member Prescott and Anita Yu as well, please, for joining and engaging with us during the onboarding early January, technically to be precise, January 25th, if I recall. We had a session and you all shared some very valuable ideas. The RIF members have taken that to heart, and we are working to develop an issues list of different items we want to discuss and brainstorm for future, given the expanded scope that I realize and know that EIM governing body members and even the GRC members last year worked on to expand the scope and authority of the RIF. We are wanting to process and think through that and try to host a thoughtful meeting coming up on May 4th. Which gets me to my third update. We were fortunate through Emily Hughes, Calisa staff, and Holly Taylor's support to get support even from Maury Galbraith, and we'll host the first in-person RIF meeting post-COVID right after the Krebsy-Wada meeting on May 4th in the afternoon. We're working to finalize the logistics, but that is the plan to might as well save on some airtime and flight pollution, but be there at the same time and be there when everybody else will be there. So that is the update. If I can recall everything from the RIF in terms of our plans and our latest membership changes.
So any questions for Vijay in the governing body? Okay. So Vijay, because you've got a couple new members and the governing body members may have not had a chance to meet with them, I'd be happy to work with you on a call to include Lindsay and Janae just to kind of do a welcome, or if they were not at the orientation, to maybe just share some of the thoughts that we shared during the orientation with the other new members.
That would be great. I think they would value that. They did join after the orientation, the onboarding meeting in January, so that would be valuable if Member Prescott and you would have the time or ability, or even if you could Chair Decker, it'll be great. They would value that, and I'm sure they would try to make time available.
So I'm willing to make time available. I'm sure at least one other governing body member would support me with that. So I'll leave that with you to work on with us. But thank you for your contribution, and thank you for all the work the RIF is doing. I'm anxious to see the issues list that you develop for us and how we can move some of those things forward.
Thank you.
All right. So the next agenda item is, as was mentioned a couple times now, we have two new Western Energy Imbalance Market participants who went live this month. And Khaled Abdul-Rahman, the CalISO VP of Power Systems and Market Technology, is here to talk about that. So, Khaled?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Anita and members of the governing body. I'm here to give you a quick update on the good news, like most of you have said already. Next page, please. Next slide. Thank you. So here is the Western EIM or the wheel, and where it says we are here, the red box to the left, that's actually where we are. So both Avista and Tacoma are actually online on production, and we're happy also to report that we are moving forward and we are in the final stages of system preparation for both Bonneville and Tucson Electric. And then, of course, next year we are working on the other three EIM entities that will be joining us. Next slide, please. No, I think you went a little, okay. So this is, I gave you probably last time the wheel, but here I wanted also to give you maybe from another angle that this is when we started in 2014. This is the energy transfer system resource. Basically, where we do the EIM transfer between the different entities. So in 2014, there was a transfer between PAC East and PAC West, and then from PAC West to the California ISO balancing area. And next slide, you will see how many of those transfers, energy transfer that are happening between the different balancing areas. So you could see here there's quite a bit of them between 2014 and where we are right now. This is even without, connecting Bonneville and Tucson yet. That's why you're seeing them in light blue here. The next time we get the update, hoping to give you, even a more elaborate picture of this. But this is just to give you where we are and how much connectivity that we are currently having between the different areas in the Western interconnection. Next slide.
So, Khaled, before you go on,
yes.
Can we go back to that slide? I hope that you observed all of the governing body members smiling as they looked at this slide. It's a huge accomplishment.
Yes, it is, and it's really something to be proud of for all the members of the Western EIM. You see, without availability of those transmission, we could not make those type of transfer. Of course, the different paths has different limits, and to the extent possible, the EIM entities are making as much as possible available for the transfer. So this slide is basically just summarize. So Avista and Avista and Tacoma, they were cut over to production on March 2nd as planned, and they are fully integrated right now in the Western EIM market. And then Bonneville re-entered the parallel operation. If you remember last time, when we were preparing for Avista and Tacoma, we had to deactivate Bonneville from our parallel operation so that we can see how we're going to go live, exactly creating the same situation for Avista and Tacoma. And then after the go live on March 8th, Bonneville is activated again in the parallel operation. So we are now in our final preparation for the go live or the cutover on May 3rd. Tucson has been in the parallel operation since February 15, and we are moving very well on track for our cutover to production on May 3rd. So it's going to be a big night for us to welcome the new members of the Western EIM. The other three EIMs, Vanguard, El Paso Electric, and WAPA Desert Southwest, all of them are on track for our production cutover date of April 5th of 2023. With that, I think that was my last slide, and I'm happy to answer any question.
So, any questions for Colette from the governing body? Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair Decker. Colette, this has been really interesting, and I was wondering, back to that transfer slide, it shows all of the balancing authorities and the transfers going, yep, perfect. Is there a way, I certainly don't want to create more work for you, but I thought it would just be really interesting if we could take this slide and also be able to somehow represent the sort of the quantity of transfers that are taking place between some of these balancing authorities, whether that's done by sort of enlarging or making larger the current lines that are connecting the different entities. But I just think that would be really, really informative, not only for the governing body but stakeholders. So I'm just curious if that's something we could do in a future presentation.
Absolutely. I will convey this information to Shabu, who is actually the author of this diagram, and we will find some ways to put those, kind of approximate numbers, because those numbers change on an hourly basis, but something to give us, like an idea. Okay?
Okay, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
No problem.
Other questions for Claude? Yeah, I was really amazed at the wheel slide that showed the percentages as the different entities became participants. But this slide certainly has my attention. I mean, I would hope people really realize just how intertied everything is and with the benefits, how the benefits are flowing. And when Elliot talks about almost $2 billion, I mean, there it is, almost $2 billion as a result of the growth of the Western Energy Imbalance Market. I want to ask if we have a representative from Avista on the phone with us today.
It looks like we have someone that's raised their hand. I'll go ahead and unmute.
We'd love to hear, I know it's only been a short amount of time, but if you could introduce yourself and how did it go?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is Scott Kinney, Director of Energy Supply at Avista. And thank you, Chair Decker and the rest of the governing body members for giving us time to provide a brief update on our integration experience and our go-live. So really appreciate it. Just a quick update, background for those of you. Avista provides electricity services to approximately 400,000 customers, and another 370,000 customers we provide natural gas to. And our service territory is eastern Washington and northern Idaho. And then that's for the electric and gas. And then we have gas facilities, areas we serve in southern Oregon as well. Our peak load is about 2,000 megawatts. We're a winter peaking utility, but our summer peak is rising quickly, and we should be a dual peaking utility probably in the next couple of years. About two-thirds of our customers we serve in the state of Washington, and the other third in Idaho from the electric side of the business. Our resource mix, we're very fortunate. We're about 60% clean, non-emitting resources today. Mainly that is hydro-based, but we do have two wind farms and a very small solar farm as part of that resource mix. We own about a 10% or 15% share, but it's about 10% of our resource portfolio with the Colstrip coal facility in eastern Montana. And then the remaining 30% of our resource mix is thermal, both base load and peaking gas plants. So that's kind of a quick background of Avista. So first off, I do want to just say thanks to the CAISO staff for all of their assistance with our implementation effort and our successful go-live on March 2nd. So we had a great partnership with the CAISO staff. I also want to recognize and thank a lot of the current EIM participants who were allowed us to come in and interview them as we prepared and put together our project scope and our schedule, our work plan, our human resources plan. They provided us a lot of valuable information as we tried to develop our implementation plan and what things look like. So again, thanks to all of them for sharing what they have learned ahead of us. We signed our implementation agreement in April of 2019, which allowed us about 3 years to integrate into the Western Energy Imbalance market. And part of the reason we took a little bit of extra time was we recognized our metering and generation control and network telecom infrastructure needed some work, needed some upgrades. And so we knew it was going to take us a little bit more time to get through the assessment phase and then actually make those upgrades and changes. In hindsight, that extra time was valuable as COVID hit and we had to go to remote operations. It was very valuable to have a little bit extra time on our integration schedule. As far as the infrastructure work that we did do, we had over 60 individual projects that we associated with our infrastructure around metering and controls and network work. So we had a lot of work to do. We set an internal deadline of June of 2021 to have all that infrastructure work done, and we were able to meet that deadline, which really helped facilitate then us transitioning into all the testing phases with regards to the integration effort. We did integrate about 8 new software packages. Probably one of the most significant ones for us was integrating a new outage management system. Our previous system was homegrown and had a lot to be desired, so it was good to get a new system up and running with regards to outage management. Over the course of our 3-year effort, we had about a little over 300 individual employees involved somehow in the integration effort and about 50 contractors that helped with our successful integration. One of the important things that we got out of those early visits with the existing participants was the human resource requirements in order to be successful after go live. And so we ended up creating and hiring 17 new positions to support EIM operations. And a lot of that was in our system operations area. We had to stand up a new desk, a new EIM operating desk, as well as a complete new settlements team. But again, we feel like we've staffed it appropriately going forward and will be successful in our efforts. Our final costs, we're going to anticipating to be about 10% under budget, which is always good for sure. As far as our go live went, it was very successful. It was extremely smooth. I work on the merchant side of the business, but we were happy to see our EIM entity start to open up our ETSRs about 90 minutes after midnight, which then really allowed us to start to participate in the market. And again, things went really well for us. We're seeing really good market dispatch, both up and down across our entire fleet, which is a good thing and provides benefit to our customers. And then we really look forward to continuing to engage with the CAISO and the rest of the participants to look for market improvement opportunities and, again, to provide the value back to our customer base. The last thing I just want to say in closing is I do also want to give a big thank you to the Utilicast team that we had hired to help support us with our integration effort. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
Scott, thank you for that. You guys really had a long journey, but I'm glad to see that it was successful, and you guys will get to claim a stake of that $2 billion that we're going to cross the line on, hopefully, so that's all good news. Any questions from the governing body members? We might ask you to come back, Scott, in possibly July and maybe talk a little bit about where you were and where you are, because it hasn't even been a month yet. So we'll look forward to hearing more from you.
That sounds good. I look forward to that.
All right. So do we have someone from Tacoma who could maybe talk about Tacoma's experience?
I've just gone ahead and unmuted someone.
Hi, this is Anita. If you could state your name and maybe give us a little bit of a picture of how Tacoma's Go Live went.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Chair Becker and distinguished member of the governing body board. My name is Bazat Hosseini. I serve as the program manager for Tacoma's EIM implementation. It is always so great to go after Scott because he explains so well what the two companies have done and have accomplished together. It's, on the other hand, it's a bit nerve-wracking to go after Scott. So I am used to it, though, as we have presented before. It really, our story was very similar to the Avesta story. We started at the same time. We are using very similar technologies as far as the technology implementation with PCI, OD, and others. We, however, had throughout the project, we had a few areas that we had to spend more time on or Avesta did. I'll give you an example that Scott used. So you see that these kind of implementations are not only well organized by the California ISO, but each company has their own specific circumstances that we have to deal with. Scott mentioned the metering infrastructure for Avesta, that the time and energy that they spent on it and how great it was and how much it added to their success. We anticipated similar things when we started the project. In fact, I know Khaled knows this very well. Track 5 is all about metering and how do we make sure that we have a settlement quality metering. When we started going down that path, we fairly quickly recognized that our meters were in a very good shape. There were only a few meters that we needed to replace and we needed to work with. However, on the other side, we understood that some of our processes and some of our technologies that we were using were not as well documented as it needed to be to go through a smooth implementation of the project. So our focus shifted slightly from focusing on the meters on focusing on getting ready for the time that we have to make changes in our technology. All said and done, Kelly Dangle, the Avesta's program manager, myself, and our implementation team, we continue to have monthly meetings to make sure that we organize our effort. We learned from one another, and we shared some of our stories, both good and bad, to be able to get in front of them. As Scott again mentioned, we jointly met with many of the current EIM entity, and their generous advice was very well received and helped us significantly in our work. I'm only going to bring up the COVID once that we actually implemented the entire program during COVID, and as you can imagine, that did add some complexity to the project implementation. However, I must say that we also experienced significant productivity increase at times during the working remotely. So all in all, I don't know if I would put it on the side of it was hindering or it was helping, but we dealt with it and we worked with it. I'm going to close by really acknowledging 3 people from CalISO. Ken Swine, our project manager, and Ken actually was managing both Avesta and Tacoma. He was awesome, he is awesome, and he's continued to provide a stellar support for us. Janet Morris, I don't know how many projects she's implemented, but I would assume 17. I had the pleasure and privilege to help PGE, Portland General Electric, also implement the EIM program. So in 2016, I had the privilege to work with Janet And she is as good and even better than what she did 7 years ago. And these programs would not succeed without Khaled. It really, we all know in the industry, if we don't know, we just make a call to Khaled. But more importantly, Khaled takes our call. It doesn't matter when we call. So thank you, Khaled, if you're still on the call. And our learning just started in March 2nd. We anticipate for the next several months we are going to learn and grow and adjust to be even more successful in adding to that $2 billion mark. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
So any questions from the governing body for Bazad? Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Becker. Bazad, thank you so much for that update. That hearing from both you and Scott was so helpful, and it sounds like overall an overwhelming positive experience in terms of preparing to go live, going live, and then the continued operations that you've been experiencing since March 2nd. So just really a wonderful update. My question for you is, you talked a little bit about, Avista's preparation for EIM, focused a little bit more on metering issues than it sounds like Tacoma's preparation focused on. You highlighted that you soon realized that you didn't need to focus on the meters as much, but that you did need to enhance some of your processes and technologies. And if you said it and I missed it, my apologies, but I'm hoping you could give us some examples of either those processes or technologies that you needed to enhance to prepare for go live with EIM.
Thank you for the question. A great question, and I'll do my best to answer it as specifically as I can. With our technologies, we had 3 major vendors in the mix. So we had PCI, we had OD, and we had OSI Soft. In addition to that, for our hydro optimization, we were developing our own technology for optimizing our production. For our hydro optimization, we had all of the documentations that we needed to understand the changes that we need to embark on to move into the EIM market. However, with some of the older technology, an example of it, we were moving certain functions from one vendor to another vendor. They both provided the same function. For many reasons, we decided to move that function to a different technology. We ran into some challenges trying to fully understand each aspect and documentations of each code in that technology, what its intent was, and how it was going to be used. And I do not want to misspeak about Vestas and metering. I was referring to Scott's comment that they focus on the metering, and as Kelly and I were working on the program often, when we got to track 5, I would just give a 2-minute update, and Kelly had worked on many aspects of it. So I just want to go on record that what I saw from Vesta was nothing second to amazing.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that clarification. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
And I see that Val has her hand up.
Thank you, Chair Decker. So I don't actually have a question. I have an observation. First, Scott and Bazad, thank you so much for being here and providing these updates. My observation is along these lines. Over the years, we've heard a number of these updates as folks have come online. I've never heard a single remark that led me to believe that competition amongst EIM entities somehow or other hampered cooperation for these onboarding activities. And I just think it is such a good thing about this EIM where everybody pulls together to make the market work for new individuals, for instance. And I really appreciated these updates from that perspective. again, there was, from what I'm hearing, a tremendous amount of cooperation always around, whether it was the ISO, whether it was other EIM entities, whether it's your consultants, it's just a really heartening thing to hear.
Okay. So again, I also want to thank both of you, Scott and Bazad, for your report outs. I really do appreciate it. A short notice. You haven't been in the market that long. And I know the RIF will probably take a deeper dive because there are other members within the RIF that are more attuned to some of the challenges and the technologies, and they'll have more questions. And I know they're going to be wanting probably a deeper dive in the RIF, or at least that's what I've seen happen previously. So get ready for that request. But I also want to invite you probably again at our May meeting to just see how it's going. So I hope it continues to go well. Hopefully we have surpassed that $2 billion mark by then. And just looking forward, and thank you for all your organization's work to be part of the participants in the EIM. So thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Okay. Moving on. Next, we have Anna McKenna, VP of Market Policy and Performance. And Anna's going to talk about some of the things, the initiatives that are going on and what's coming up next.
Thank you, Chair Decker. Yeah. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Decker, and governing body members, colleagues, and members of the public. It's a tough act to follow. I did want to take a moment to myself welcome Vista Utilities and Tacoma Power, and congratulations on your transition into the WEIM. Thank you for also providing me this opportunity to walk through the planning calendar and the business to come. So next slide, please. So over the next, I start with today, and this week we will be taking some items to you and the Board of Governors under the Joint Authority. The two items that are coming to you under Joint is going to be the decision on long start unit definitions and the RDRR, or Reliability Demand Response Resources Bidding Enhancements. And that's the first part of that initiative. Both of those are items that impact the participation in the real-time market, and we're coming to you under Joint. There are no items under advisory for this month, and then, of course, there's a series of the briefing items, as you will see. In April, for the April meeting, we currently don't have any items on Joint. Of course, that may always change, or advisory, but that is the current schedule for April. In May, however, we are anticipating to request the second track of the RDRR changes that we're looking to make. And again, that will come to you under Joint Authority, as well as the any resource efficiency evaluation changes. And I will be providing you a briefing on that tomorrow in the joint session on pending and stakeholder initiatives. But that's a placeholder there in the event that we make any changes. We anticipate that would come in May. Again, in May there would be any remaining items, normal briefing items that would be part of the agenda. I'll pause and see if there are any questions before I move to the next slide.
So I don't have any questions on this. I was, in terms of the RSC, are you going to be addressing that this afternoon, or is that tomorrow?
That will be tomorrow as one of the items of the pending initiative, but I can share with you that we are actually currently working very diligently, passed on, based on the comments and the feedback we got at the last joint governing body and Board of Governors meeting that we held back in March. We have been evaluating a proposal for potential implementation this year that Nevada has put forth that would allow us to no longer freeze the transfers when an entity fails the resource efficiency evaluation. It's an interim proposal we're looking to evaluate. We've made some good progress. We have a meeting later this month with the stakeholders to discuss that further, but we're not quite done with that just yet. And we are also looking to potentially move up some of the phase 2 elements that we had been talking over the past year in light of the comments that were, made at the last board meeting, as well as our feedback from stakeholders on the need to really consider more carefully and closely the consequences of failure.
Okay, thank you. We'll wait for that tomorrow then. So please continue.
Great. So on the next slide, we have a bit of a longer-term picture that we provide. We've already almost finished our first quarter, so that's almost behind us. In the second quarter, as I noted, we'll have the resource efficiency potential changes that are coming up in the RERR. In the third quarter, we're hoping to take both the energy storage enhancement proposals as well as the day-ahead market enhancements. And both of those items, based on what we currently see, and these are draft, proposals right now, based on what we currently see, we anticipate may come under joint authority as well. And currently, we don't have any items under advisory for the governing body members. In the fourth quarter, again, a little bit perhaps too early to know. We don't have any particular items that we're highlighting as joint or advisory, but we do have the extended day-ahead market we anticipate to be taken later this year, and that the classification for that item is still pending. So that is pretty much all I wanted to highlight in terms of the upcoming business, and I'm happy to answer any questions any of the members might have regarding our upcoming business.
So any questions from the governing body members for Anna? John,
okay.
John,
sorry.
Yeah, it's just, Anna, thanks for that report. This is John. Just looking at quarter 2 under joint, you have pending decision on classifications, resource efficiency evaluation. Is that pending?
That's actually, thanks for catching that. The slide before that has the right classification.
Yeah.
That, of course,
That's
comes to you as joint. Yes, absolutely. Thanks, John. I missed that.
No worries. Thanks.
Okay, Anna, thank you for that report. And we'll look forward.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, before we go to our informational items, I want to give a short update on where we are on the governing body market expert. The position closed at the end of January, and the hiring process is continuing to proceed. We expect to be interviewing for the position in March and April, so more to come in the next few months. Our last item is the informational reports that are included in our board packet. Are there any questions about the informational items or other business to come before the governing body members? If not, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair Decker. We can adjourn.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.